The buried truth. Was Noah's flood a real event? In humanity's collective memory, one story transcends the boundaries of faith and history. Existing as a deep scar, the Great Flood. A global annihilation, an instrument of divine punishment, where all life was swept away, leaving only a single ark. For millennia, the tale of Noah, the ark, and a promise of salvation has been treated as proof of absolute power. But today, we must confront the ultimate question, one that scholars have been ridiculed for asking and scientists dismissed. Was this global event truly a global event in the way we are taught? Or is it the most terrifying localized geological catastrophe warped by religious leaders into a tool for global dominance? Tonight, Unseen History ventures into the dangerous waters of censored history. We will not look for evidence of faith, but for evidence of stratigraphy, anthropology, and politics. We expose how a real, regional event was systematically distorted, standardized, and utilized to forge a single, powerful religious doctrine capable of binding billions. This is the buried truth. Was Noah's flood a real event? Prepare yourself, because the truth lies buried beneath the thick sediment of belief. To understand the truth, we must step outside the Bible and travel back to the dawn of civilization. The flood story, with its specifics of the ark, the saved species, and the total destruction of the world, is one of the most retold narratives on the planet, but it is not exclusive to Judaism or Christianity. Thousands of years before Genesis, in the cradle of civilization, ancient Mesopotamia, scholars found astonishing cuneiform records. We are talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh, dating back as early as 2100 BC, predating the earliest parts of the Bible. Its hero, Utnapishtim, is warned of a destructive flood by the angry gods. Utnapishtim is ordered to build a massive vessel, bringing his family and all species inside. He releases birds to find dry land, and his vessel eventually lands on a mountain. Sound familiar? This synchronization is not a coincidence, it is proof of the myth's shared origin. Flood stories exist in over 500 distinct cultures worldwide, from the Greek myths Deucalion and Pyrrha, to Hindu mythology, Matsya, and even Native American tribes. They all share a pattern, a great water disaster, divine punishment, and one righteous survivor. This pattern flourished in places where massive floods were a harsh reality of life. Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, was a fertile but brutally and unpredictably flooded valley. A sudden flood from these two great rivers, with waters rising dozens of feet above normal, could wipe out entire Sumerian and Akkadian city-states. To the inhabitants of these isolated communities, witnessing the world, of their own, completely erased by floodwaters was nothing less than a global event. A judgment by the gods. It was these very real traumas, the stories of terrible loss and the necessity of rebuilding civilization, that formed the foundation for the flood myth. These tales were passed down orally for millennia, adopted by neighboring cultures, and most importantly, adapted by the Hebrew scribes during their Babylonian exile. They took a story of localized, brutal destruction and incorporated it into their canon. But there is a crucial difference. When the biblical authors adopted the story, they didn't just retell a regional disaster. They systematically magnified it. The purpose was not to record flood history, it was to establish a dominating doctrine. A god can only be supreme if his power is universal. A localized flood would fail to convey that authority. Thus, the story was transformed from a physical disaster into a tool of theological manipulation, turning a real tragedy into proof of a single god's exclusivity. The shift from the Great Mesopotamian Flood to the Global Great Flood was an act of political genius. It allowed religious leaders to claim that their god ruled not just their land, but the entire cosmos. This immediately elevated them above all local gods, all civilizations, and all rival beliefs. This was the first step in building a spiritual empire, an empire founded on the fear of comprehensive punishment. This magnification leaves significant geological gaps. Modern geologists point out that a volume of water sufficient to cover every mountain on Earth would severely alter the planet's chemistry, leave colossal deposits, and completely wipe out most life forms. This evidence does not exist in the geological record. Therefore, If the event was real, it had to be much smaller, a factual geographical event that terrified ancient cultures. This brings us to the hidden truth behind the myth. Was there a massive geological event in the Near East? A real catastrophe that provided the terrifying inspiration for the Noah story? Was the buried truth not something supernatural, but a natural disaster that was strategically exploited? If not a global miracle, then what was the physical event that sowed enough fear and inspiration to become the Great Flood? This brings us to the most respected geological theory today. A real, measurable catastrophe, the Black Sea Deluge theory. This narrative is not just a hypothesis, it is a seismic script that may have reshaped ancient civilization forever. Around 7,600 years ago, the Black Sea was not the ocean we know. It was an isolated, freshwater lake, significantly smaller and below sea level. However, to the south, the Mediterranean sea level was rising relentlessly. Fueled by melting glaciers from the Ice Age, the immense pressure from the Mediterranean concentrated at a narrow land bridge. A fragile geological wall, the modern-day Bosporus Strait. Inevitably, the wall collapsed. Scientists estimate that when the strait broke, a massive rush of water, potentially 200 times the volume of Niagara Falls, poured into the Black Sea basin. This disaster did not last 40 days, it lasted months, perhaps even a year, raising the lake level by hundreds of feet and submerging over 150,000 square kilometers of coastal land. Imagine this: entire coastal cultures, fertile fields, and villages that had existed for thousands of years were swallowed by the ocean itself within hours. To those inhabitants forced to flee to higher ground, carrying tales of a great sea that suddenly appeared and drowned their world. This was literally an apocalyptic event. Their story, of destruction coming from the waters, was passed down, morphing into the Mesopotamian myths, and finally adopted into the Hebrew canon. The truth wasn't water from heaven, it was water from the sea rising. This single, real geological event provided the inspiration and the foundational fear for the classic story. But the myth did not stop at scientific fact. Later scribes, especially during the Babylonian exile, realized the enormous political value of the story. They had to answer the question: if the god of Babylon caused a flood, Gilgamesh, how is our God stronger? The answer was, our God did not just cause a regional flood, he caused a global flood. This is the point where the myth was weaponized. By magnifying the real catastrophe into a universal judgment, they established their deity as the sole, all-powerful God, unbound by geographical borders or rival local gods. This was an act of theological manipulation designed to build ultimate authority. This magnification served another political purpose: social control. The Noah story is not just about punishment, it is about absolute obedience. The ark became the symbol of salvation, but it was only granted to those who followed the strict commandments of the singular God. By instilling fear of total punishment, the flood, and offering a single lifeline, religious leaders created a social structure built on unquestioning submission. The politicization of the flood narrative was a stunning success, cementing the story as the foundation of the world's largest religions, solidifying the power of church structures for millennia. This is not evidence of the mystical, it is a marvel of administrative and theological engineering. One cannot build a solid political empire without a universal myth to bind the subjects. Today, as scientists and archaeologists continue to explore the remnants beneath the Black Sea and compare ancient texts, the truth slowly emerges. The Great Flood was a real event witnessed and recorded by ancient peoples. But it was not a miracle. It was a terrifying reminder of the power of nature. It was then skillfully turned into a tool of control by our spiritual rulers. The truth always leaves scars, whether they are geological sediment layers or cracks in ancient texts. The question is, what other vital historical truths are still buried beneath the weight of established doctrines? Find out next time on Unseen History.